Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Most Accurate Podcast. I am your host, Addison Hayes, joined as always by one of the most accurate rankers in all of the fantasy football community, John Paulson. John, how are we doing on this fine day?
I'm doing pretty well. It's October, and you can see from the decorations behind me, it's spooky season, so we have some spectacular sneaky starts for you this week. Let's go.
Oh, I like it. With a little alliteration in there, too.
Yeah.
Spectacular, sneaky starts. Yes. All right. So, of course, we've been doing this now. This is week number 6. So we have 2 players at each position that we consider to be sneaky starts that you should be trying to work into your lineup. Obviously, don't force it if you have better options, because most of these guys, it's not like we're advertising the best at each position, but these guys have really good matchups, and you should consider finding ways to throw them into your fantasy football lineup. So we will start at the quarterback position. John, who are we throwing in from your sneaky start?
Yeah, I typed in 2 or 3 different names here. You took Mac Jones, who I did write up. I do like him quite a bit this week with oh, sorry, spoiler alert. You took the guy that I wanted to take, but we can get into that later. Bryce Young, not a confident, sneaky start. There are players that I am excited about when they're sneaky starts, and there are players that I'm like, well, the matchup's good. And this is the case of the matchup being good. Bryce Young has not topped 12 fantasy points since week 2. So this is definitely not about Bryce Young. This is about Bryce Young playing the Cowboys, who have allowed at least 24 fantasy points per game to the opposing quarterback in every week this season. So this is a stoppable force versus movable object situation again. Last time I used that phrase, it was Rico Dowdle, and he rushed for 200 yards last week. So I'm hoping for the same from Young, a big game from him. And if you're in desperate need, I think Bryce Young is doable this week at quarterback.
He was actually someone that I had on my short list of who I wanted to include for mine as well. Just because, I feel like every week now I'm just like, oh, who plays Dallas? And who do I have to be excited about that plays the Dallas Cowboys defense this week? And when I saw that it was the Panthers, I was like, well, I kind of felt the same way as you. It's just the matchup works. I don't love Bryce Young, but he's probably, if you're playing super flex leagues, he's a really good start as your QB2. But as your QB1, maybe you are in a really desperate situation. I mean, Lamar's not going to play this week. Brock Purdy's not going to play this week. We have CJ Stroud on bye. If you're relying on Carson Wentz or JJ McCarthy, they're also on bye. So there are, I think, teams out there that when you're looking at the waiver wire, if you're streaming a guy, Bryce Young is definitely a name that you should be looking at because of the Dallas Cowboys defense.
He's also getting Jalen Coker back, right? We think.
I believe so. I know he was practicing. I don't know if he's going to be active, but
that's another weapon. So
it is
another feather in his cap.
So as you had mentioned, that my sneaky start at the quarterback position then is Mac Jones, the San Francisco 49ers quarterback. They get the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week, they are 25th in adjusted fantasy points against the quarterback position. Mac Jones himself has put up 20 plus fantasy points in 2 of his 3 starts, and he's thrown for over 280 yards in all 3 games. He's not a mobile quarterback, so he's not going to get you anything really on the ground, but through the air, he's been an absolute demon. And the one game that he didn't get over 20 fantasy points, he only threw 1 touchdown. So you're probably looking at a guy who can throw for 250 and 2, 250 and 3, maybe even get up to the 300 mark as well, which will give you a very, very nice floor game, especially when you look at the type of games that Tampa Bay has allowed to the opposing quarterbacks. Most notably, of course, the shootout last week against the Seahawks, where Sam Darnold threw for 340 yards and 4 touchdowns. So Mac Jones, I think, is just going to let it rip, especially because Christian McCaffrey can't seem to be going on the ground. That's probably more of an offensive line issue. But he's just going to throw, and he's going to rack up yards, hopefully throw a couple touchdowns, and be a good start for you.
Yeah, usually a good idea to start a Kyle Shanahan quarterback, even if his name's not Brock Purdy or whoever the starter is. Tampa Bay has given up an average of 235 yards and 2.0 touchdowns per game to the quarterback position, including what you mentioned was a shootout against Seattle. I mean, 341-4 from Sam Darnold. What can Mac Jones do to it?
Yeah. Yeah. Funny that we're at this point with Mac Jones, but hey, I mean, we might have a little quarterback controversy in San Francisco. The guy that Shanahan wanted all along in that draft class a couple years ago. But it's been fun to watch, and I think Mac Jones is a good start. So moving on to the tight end position, then, John, why don't you kick us off with this? Really, this is a super sneaky name. I think I don't know if people realize exactly what he's been doing. I know I've started to throw him into dynasty waiver wire videos, and when you get to that point, um, and then you see him in redraft circles, that makes me even more confident for adding him in a dynasty setting. So why don't you hit us with your tight end sneaky start this week?
Yeah, and you also took my tight end that I wanted to mention. He's on my short list. I won't mention the name, so it's a big surprise when you say it. AJ Barner is the guy that I'm going to talk about for the Seahawks, and I think everybody was kind of writing him off before the season, but he's been, playing starter snaps. He had 7 for 53 and 2 touchdowns last week in that shootout against the Bucks. His touchdown total now is 4 in 5 games. He does have a low floor. I am afraid a little bit to recommend him because he's only averaging 3.2 targets per game, but he is getting those red zone targets. And if we believe in Sam Darnold, who I did write up against the Jaguars as a quarterback, sneaky start, then we should also look at Barner as a potential touchdown scorer. We shall see. The Jaguars have given up 58 or more yards and a touchdown to the position, Travis Kelce, Jake Tonges, in each of the last 2 weeks. So they've been a little bit vulnerable against the position.
Yeah. I think he's definitely a super, like, when you get down into that mix of tight end position where you're just hoping for a touchdown, and you don't really, it's great that if he can get some 3, 4, 5 reception games in there, 50 plus yards. But when you're really banking on that touchdown, knowing that a guy like AJ Barner is seeing all the red zone snaps, and especially, he could potentially be the third option on this team right now, behind Cooper Kupp, and it seems like sometimes Kupp has good games, sometimes he doesn't, and then Barner could have games like he did last week. So I'm with you on this one. I think this is the definition of a sneaky tight end start, and I like it a lot. So my tight end sneaky start, the guy that I stole from you as well, pairing with my Mac Jones sneaky start, is Jake Tonges, the Niners tight end, while George Kittle has been out, because it sounds like George Kittle isn't going to be ready for this week. I think they're anticipating him to be back next week in week 7. So we get one more week of Jake Tonges. And he's either had 4 receptions or has scored a touchdown in 4 out of the 5 games that he's played this year. He's averaging 15 PPR points per game over the last 2 weeks. And the Buccaneers are 29th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to the tight end position, having allowed 7 for 59 to Kyle Pitts, 4 for 37 and 2 to Dallas Goedert. And then last week, 7 for 53 and 2 to AJ Barner. So with Ricky Pearsall seeming like he's going to be out again this week, Juwan Jennings may or may not play. I've heard some optimistic news that they're looking to get him back soon, but I don't know if that means this week. Maybe it's a next week thing. So if their wide receiver core continues to be kind of depleted, Tonges continues to be a little bit more necessary, especially in the red zone where he's been a major threat. So if you're looking for a pretty solid bet on touchdown, but then with some upside because of the lack of receivers around him, I think that Jake Tonges could take advantage of this really good matchup against Tampa Bay.
Yeah, on Jennings, if Jennings does return, that's another feather in the cap of Mac Jones, another weapon for him. But I think Tonges, his stock goes up a little bit if Pearsall and Jennings are both out. If Jennings is back, I don't think it takes a huge hit because the tight end is part of that offense, and I think he'll be involved. 3 for 58 and a touchdown on 5 targets against the Jaguars, 7 for 41 and a touchdown on 11 targets against the Rams in the last 2 games. And I had to start him last week in an FFPC league, and he delivered in a big way.
Yeah, it sounds weird when you're like, I had to start him, and then he puts up like 17 or 18 fantasy points or whatever it was. It might have been more. And is that tight end
20.
premium? Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. So you love to see it. Um, so those are our quarterbacks and tight ends. Then for the onesie positions, we can move on to the running back position. John, you once again, I got mine in here first, but I was debating throwing in your guy here for my sneaky start. So I'm fully endorsing this one. Who do we got?
Yeah, your guy was a sneaky start last week, and I don't want to spoil do any spoilers, so I won't say anything. But he was a sneaky start last week, and just keep that in mind as you get into this discussion after my Jacory Croskey-Merritt discussion for the Commanders. It looks like he's taking over this backfield. We had a little report prior to last week saying that the Commanders were comfortable with their committee, but they felt that JCM was the best suited to take a lead back role. And we immediately saw it in week 5. He handled 16 of 23 backfield touches, 150 total yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. Now, we saw Woody Marks 2 weeks ago have a great game, and then they turned around the following week and didn't hardly give him any work, which was weird and kind of screwed up the rankings for that week. But Bill seems to be really moving ahead of the rest of these guys. So I think he's a good start, especially against Chicago. They're 28th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to the position. They've given up an average of 171 total yards, 1.5 touchdowns per game to opposing backfields, allowing 6.05 yards per carry to running backs. So I like JCM as a high upside RB2 this week.
Yeah, I know a lot of people could be hesitant about the JCM stuff because of Woody Marks and placing their trust in him, and then he didn't deliver this week. And a phenomenal matchup and where Houston blew the crap out of Baltimore. You would think that would mean good things for the running back position. Chubb just kind of had a little bit more, and then CJ Stroud threw for 4 touchdowns. But Jacory Croskey-Merritt gives me a little bit more confidence this week because even if they kind of revert back to the committee, he was still seeing 7 to 10 carries a game prior to this past week where his volume and snap percentage, rose compared to the previous game. So he's a big play kind of guy. And even if he reverts back to getting 7, 8, 9, 10 carries instead of the 14 that he had this past week, he can still make some pretty big plays happen, especially against the Chicago Bears defense that we watch Ashton Genty just like absolutely torch. So I think that there's a floor there with JCM in case of the worst thing that could happen where Chris Rodriguez sees more snaps or more carries. But then there's also a ceiling to where JCM had a season high, a career high in snap percentage this past week, but he was still sub 50%. So what if this is the week where he continues to grow and he's up at 56 or 55 or 60% of snaps, sees 15 plus carries, another couple of receptions? Like there's also a ceiling there with JCM if the Commanders continue to put their faith in him, and as they kind of showcased last week against the Chargers. So there's a floor that I feel like is safe, but a really high ceiling in a really good matchup. That's why I also considered throwing in Jacory Croskey-Merritt myself. So I'm glad that you talked about him. My sneaky start then, going back to my sneaky start from last week, was Rico Dowdle, and I'm running it back because I was immensely correct with 200 yards, 30 plus fantasy points in PPR leagues. So I'm just running it back. Rico Dowdle, the Carolina Panthers, as we just mentioned with Bryce Young, gets the Dallas Cowboys, who are ranked 30th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to the running back position. It is also conveniently a revenge game for Rico Dowdle, who, the Cowboys decided to let walk, and then they signed Javonte. May or may not be. Honestly, you could argue that was probably the right decision with how Javonte's playing right now, but I'm sure Rico would say otherwise. So I'm sure he wants to show Dallas what they're missing. They have allowed every opposing RB1 to score 11 plus PPR fantasy points this year, including 30 points to Josh Jacobs 2 weeks ago, and then almost 20 PPR points to Breece Hall last week. The final thing that gives me confidence for Rico Dowdle is he saw 4 targets last week compared to Trevor Etienne's 1. So if Dallas, their offense is massively explosive and they're able to take advantage of the Panthers' defense and score quickly, and Carolina kind of has to throw more to chase up with them, Rico Dowdle could also see a solid target share that could also elevate his floor or ceiling if they are needing to throw a little bit more. So I think he's relatively game script proof, especially without Chuba Hubbard and only Trevor Etienne behind him, to where he could be great on the ground, but then also great if they need to catch up a little bit and he can catch a few passes.
I like it. I wrote him up last week. I was not confident in him, not as confident as I should have been. I was a little worried about that split with Trevor Etienne, but Connor Allen pointed out that all of Etienne's work, or almost all of it, came after Bryce Young had left the game the previous week. So that should have given us more confidence with Rico Dowdle being in that lead role and seeing all those touches.
So moving on to the wide receiver position, then, man, we're just really attacking two very specific defenses this week. So why don't you, John, kick us off with your wide receiver sneaky start?
He was a sneaky start last week in the article. I didn't talk about him I don't think on the podcast, but Kendrick Bourne, with both Jennings and Pearsall out, went nuts against the Rams. You weren't sure exactly who Mac Jones was going to favor, with Demarcus Robinson back as well. It took me a second to think of his name. And that was a revenge game for him against the Rams. He did okay. He got some targets, but Bourne was the guy. 10 for 142 on 11 targets. I think even if Juwan Jennings is back, I think Bourne is running as the number 2 after that game and gets those opportunities. And it does seem like he and Mac Jones have a really nice rapport. I mean, catching 10 out of 11 targets for that many yards is pretty great. And the Buccaneers have given up 12.2 catches on average for 139 yards and a touchdown to the receiver position this year. This could turn into another shootout with the Bucs involved, and the 49ers could certainly put up points. So I do like Bourne. I've got him ranked, I think, wide receiver 27. That's without Jennings in the lineup, and I don't think he's going to drop too much if Jennings is deemed in. I think most of Jennings' production will probably come from Demarcus Robinson and the other receivers there.
I don't know why I didn't think of this until now, or why I didn't even remember it. Kendrick Bourne had some pretty phenomenal production a year or two ago in New England. Was Mac Jones his quarterback for that? I think he had to. Maybe
that's a good question.
Or is it Drake May?
You can vamp while I don't know.
Yeah,
I have to look it up.
It was before he tore his ACL, I think, that year. Maybe he had a run there where, I mean, he was doing phenomenal things from a PPR standpoint. He wasn't scoring all that much, but I did remember that was in New England, and I kind of wondered if that was a Mac Jones thing, to where maybe their connection runs a little bit deeper than just kind of being both like on the same team at this current moment. They're both on the same team a few years ago, maybe, if that was who was throwing the ball to Kendrick Bourne. You didn't find it yet?
I'll bring it up in a minute. Let's move on to the next one.
I'll hit you with my wide receiver sneaky start, which pairs with my running back sneaky start, your quarterback sneaky start. This is probably the least sneakiest of this whole entire group, but it is Tetairoa McMillan, the rookie wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers, who once again gets the Dallas Cowboys defense. I feel like that is pretty much all we really need to say about why you should be putting Tetairoa McMillan in your lineup. He's actually one of 3 wide receivers this year to see 8 or more targets in all 5 games. It is him, Puka Nacua, and Garrett Wilson. Now, the difference between Tetairoa McMillan and the other 2 is that the other 2 are top 5 fantasy wide receivers right now. McMillan is chilling down in like the wide receiver 24-ish range of PPR formats, and probably similarly in half PPR. And he's been totally fine with that volume, except he just hasn't scored a touchdown yet. So I think this is probably Tetairoa McMillan's breakout week. It's a very bad defense, an opportunity to where Carolina is going to have to throw perhaps more than usual. And I think that this could be the breakout week where we really start considering Tetairoa McMillan as like he is here in his rookie year. I think 100 yards and a touchdown is well within his range of possibilities this year or this week. And this could be the real turning point to where we consider Tetairoa McMillan a potential top 15 rest of season wide receiver, as he kind of has that second half rookie wide receiver breakout that we see pretty much every single year.
Yeah, I'll do what people on Twitter and other social media would say, and say this is not sneaky enough. If you want to be sneaky, you should say Jalen Coker for the cokeheads out
Xavier
there.
Legette.
But no, I wouldn't go with that.
Don't
but
do that.
It is sneaky if you say it's sneaky, because this is our show. We can do what we want. To follow up on the Kendrick Bourne, his career year was in 2021. He had 55 catches for 800 yards, 5 touchdowns, had some good games. He's always been a guy that when he gets snaps, he tends to produce. Even after that, he had 3 more seasons with New England. He had some games where he started playing starter snaps and was producing. But in 2021, that was Mac Jones' rookie year. That was also his best year there. I think he had 3,800 yards, 22 touchdowns. So the connection runs deep, Addison.
It runs very deep. We should. This is something that we missed last week. We maybe could have seen it coming even more than. I mean, you highlighted him in the article, but man, we could have been like, dude, Kendrick Bourne, wide receiver 1 for Mac Jones again. We could have predicted it. We could have been so smart, but now we're predicting it this week, and hopefully we're smart again. All right, so that is sneaky starts for week 6, 2 players at each position. And then, as we do every single week, we're just going to wrap up with a Bleacher Nation fantasy card, which, if you're unfamiliar, Bleacher Nation fantasy app that you can download on either Google Play or the iOS App Store. It's a brand new game this year. It's a pick'em game, kind of like Prize Picks or Underdogs, where you go through, you find props, and you say either more or less, stack a few of them together, and then play your entry, and you get a certain multiplier payout if that entry hits. Every single one of those legs hit. So we hit on our card last week, which now brings us up to 2 in a row. I don't know exactly where we are in the season, but we've hit on our last 2. And so we're hoping to make it 3 in a row. They are running a deposit match, a 50% deposit match up to $100. So if you are a new player and you sign up, you can deposit up to $200, and you will get up to $100 then in deposit match bonus funds when you sign up on Bleacher Nation Fantasy app. Then they are running for this Sunday, for new users only, a promo leg of Jahmyr Gibbs more than half a rushing yard. So you can just throw that right into your card if you are a new user, which they are saying means that, or defining as someone who has never played an entry before. So whether you just signed up or whether you've signed up prior and you haven't played an entry yet, you qualified for a new user and you qualify for this promo leg for the Sunday night game for Jahmyr Gibbs more than half a rushing yard. So definitely throw that leg into your card if you are playing this Sunday. But then we each have an additional leg to throw in there. So John, why don't you hit us with your leg this week?
Yes, and as I was discussing Bill in the earlier segment, I was thinking, why don't we make a pick on him? And so I looked at I was looking down while you were talking at the line for Croskey-Merritt, his rushing yards line, 61.5. The Bears have given up 171 total yards, 1.5 touchdowns. I should look up their rushing yards. It can't be good, can it?
Probably not.
Rushing yards allowed. I'm going to take a second here and do that.
They gave up over 100 Ash and Genty, so it's I'd imagine it's probably not good.
I'm assuming with the 605 yards per carry allowed to running backs that it's pretty bad, but I can pull it up here in a second. The other play I was going to do, if you're not a new user and you want to play a third leg, is the J.K. Dobbins more number. I think it's 68.5 right now. I also like that.
They've allowed the 5th most rushing yards to running backs this year, and that is with a bye week. So I'd imagine
the Bears 157 yards on average, and JCM's line is 61.5. I like the more.
Yeah,
Addison.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Yeah, just it's so funny because it's like 5 games, 5 games, 5 games, 4 games, 5 games, 5. So they've given up more rushing yards than the Vikings, Jets, Giants, Bills.
They gave up
1 fewer game.
62 yards, which is more than 61.5, to Raheem Mostert last week 2 weeks ago in 4 attempts.
Yeah. Yep. JCM can definitely get there. Shouldn't take all that much, especially for a player like him. That's phenomenal. You did have another leg in here. That did you want to throw that one in as an
I
aside, maybe
mentioned
for the? Yep.
Yeah, I would mention it. I think you were looking up the
Oh, I'm
rushing
sorry.
yards, but it was J.K. Dobbins, more than 68.5. I've got him projected for about 70 something, but he's gone over that number in 4 straight games, and that is also a good matchup against the Jets, who I think the last 2 weeks have given up 99 to Achan and then like 126
Yeah,
to
100 something to Javante.
Javante, if that's correct. So they're having some trouble stopping the run as well. And I think JK, in a game that Denver should control, he should see enough carries to get him there.
Nice. Yep. I wanted to make sure that we added that in there too, because for anybody who's not a new user who can't take advantage of the promo leg, if you wanted to add some more legs in there that are John Paulson endorsed, you can throw in Jacory Croskey-Merritt and J.K. Dobbins. My leg will be David Njoku more than 33.5 receiving yards. He's actually been over this in 4 out of 5 games and has been over 40 yards in 3 out of 5 games. It seemed like the offensive philosophy for Cleveland this past week against Minnesota in Ireland was short passes with Dylan Gabriel and a lot of targets to the tight end position. David Njoku actually had 67 yards last week against a defense that I believe the Vikings are first in adjusted fantasy points allowed to tight ends. So it was not a phenomenal matchup, but David Njoku still got there through strictly volume. Now he gets a Pittsburgh Steelers defense who ranks 29th in adjusted fantasy points allowed. They've allowed the 13th most receiving yards to opposing tight ends, including 90 yards to Hunter Henry a few weeks ago, and then 40 2 weeks ago to TJ Hawkinson. So I like David Njoku strictly through volume, getting to 33.5 receiving yards. I debated throwing in Tetairoa McMillan. I believe his was at 70 receiving yards. So if you wanted my alternate one as well to maybe stack out a 4 or a 5 Carter, then you can maybe throw that one in there too. I like Tetairoa McMillan over or more than 70 receiving yards. But my main one is David Njoku, more than 33.5 receiving yards.
Yeah, and the Steelers, you mentioned this, they're not great against the tight end position. 5.3 catches for 63 yards and 3/4 of a touchdown to the position this season, but that's just against like a regular passing attack that doesn't target the tight end as much as the Browns seem to. Now that might be a 1-game sample with Dylan Gabriel and these 2 tight ends, but they don't have a whole lot going on at receiver. So I think they will both be involved on a weekly basis. Jerry Jeudy's not playing well. Isaiah Bond's brand new, but seems to be the number 1 receiver right now with Cedric Tillman out. So why not lead on these tight ends? You got a vet there with Njoku and Fannin as well. So target the tight end.
Don't want Dylan Gabriel throwing games away. He's going to be more of a game manager for the moment. So target David Njoku. So that'll be it. That's our Bleacher Nation fantasy card. If you're a new user, you can use the promo leg of Jahmyr Gibbs more than half a rushing yard. John likes Jacory Croskey-Merritt more than 61.5 rushing. And then also you could throw in J.K. Dobbins is rushing. Mine is David Njoku more than 33.5 receiving yards. Could also throw in Tetairoa McMillan more than 70 receiving yards, as I believe was his play this morning. So you can throw those all into a lineup card on Bleacher Nation Fantasy, and hopefully we hit for the 3rd week in a row. But that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Most Accurate Podcast with our sneaky starts and the Bleacher Nation Fantasy card. Good luck to everybody in your matchups, and we will catch you again next week for week 7 on the Most Accurate Podcast. See you.